Good evening from Washington. Welcome to the Ingraham Angle. I'm Jason Chaffetz in tonight for Laura. We've got a great show for you, full of big stories and breaking news. Democrats and Republicans actually cooperated to end a government shutdown, but many conservatives are not celebrating, and we'll tell you why. And we've got Ambassador John Bolton on The Odd Couple at the Olympics. Vice President Mike Pence sitting almost next to the sister of North Korea's dictator. But first, breaking news. President Trump has decided tonight he cannot release the Democrats' FISA memo, a rebuttal to the Republicans' memo. Trump says he is inclined to release the Democrats' memo, but it needs changes because it contains classified material and a very sensitive passage. Let's go to Fox's Ed Henry now with more.
Well, Jason, good to see you. This is a bit of a surprise because just a few hours ago, lawmakers close to the process were predicting to us that the Democrats' memo would go public as early as tonight. President Trump himself indicated to reporters in the middle of the day he was inclined to release this with at least some sensible redactions of national security information. But I think a clue of this holdup came later in the afternoon when the president huddled with lawyers from the White House counsel's office, Don McGahn, and lawyers from the Justice Department, plus the FBI Director Christopher Wray. Once you get the lawyers more deeply involved, as you know, look out, the changes may be coming. Sure enough, McGahn fired off a letter to House Intel Chairman Devin Nunes saying, quote, although the president is inclined to declassify the February 5th memo, because the memorandum contains numerous properly classified and especially sensitive passages, he's unable to do so at this time. However, given the public interest and the transparency in these unprecedented circumstances, the president has directed that the Justice Department personnel be available to give technical assistance to the Intel Committee should the committee wish to revise the February 5th memo to mitigate the risks identified by the department. Now, allies of Nunes have been saying they believe this was a bit of a setup. That Democrat Adam Schiff put classified information in there that he knew would trip this up, and then Democrats would cry out that the president is hiding something. Well, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer tonight pounced. He said, quote, the president's double standard when it comes to transparency is appalling. The rationale for releasing the Nunes memo, transparency, vanishes when it could show information that's harmful to him. Millions of Americans are asking one simple question: what is he hiding? Now, the next step for House Intel is to either accept the president's decisions, make some changes, and then send it back to the White House, or they can try to override the president in a secret session of the House. There's been only 6 of those in history, very rare. Regardless of how they do it, here's the bottom line, Jason. We're told the Democratic memo does not dispute the key point of Nunes' memo. FBI and DOJ personnel got the FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page after not telling the judge that the dossier was paid for by the DNC and the Clinton campaign, and that's going to be a key issue moving forward, Jason.
Ed, this was not expected at all. I think all of us thought that it was going to be released, but that basic underlying premise, as you said, nothing is out there, is there, that it refutes what what Devin Nunes' memo says?
At least not yet. Now, Democrat Adam Schiff and others are saying that if this memo sees the light of day, they're claiming that Devin Nunes cherry-picked information, cherry-picked intel, and that parts of their memo will refute some of the Nunes memo. But we simply don't know because we haven't seen it yet, Jason.
Now, Ed, there was also some movement at the Department of Justice with the number 3 person leaving. What do you know about that?
Yeah, this seems strange because Rachel Brand had only been on the job for 9 months, seen as maybe a star who would rise through the ranks. She's been battling trafficking. She's really been at the forefront of domestic surveillance and chasing down terrorists, key Justice Department programs. But maybe she simply wanted a more lucrative gig. We're hearing she's moving to the top legal post at Walmart. But it's hard not to notice that if Rod Rosenstein gets fired or steps down, she would have been overseeing Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe. That would have put her in the middle of a political firestorm, a sign it's going to be very hard for the president to find someone who wants to replace her, probably even harder to find someone the Democrats in the Senate will confirm. They'll try to filibuster, and most of all, a lot of people in the White House are frustrated with Attorney General Jeff Sessions right now. This means Rosenstein, the deputy, may have even more influence, Jason.
Ed, thank you very much. Joining us for more reaction, we have John Solomon, a reporter for The Hill newspaper, former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino, and talk radio host and attorney Leo Terrell. Thank you all for joining us here tonight. Leo, I want to start with you. We all thought that, I thought, and I think a lot of people thought that the president may have some redactions but would ultimately release this memo, but it's not coming out tonight. How are you and the Democrats going to react to that?
Well, it's a sham, and I'll tell you why. Just last week, Jason, despite a public announcement by the FBI not to release the Republican memo, President Trump released the memo. Shame on the president, because it is very clear he did not want this memo released because it negates his argument last week that he's exonerated. It is embarrassing and shameful. There is nothing in that memo that would have prevented its release today, except that it was bad PR for President Trump.
But Leo, did you see anything in the Nunes memo that was dealt with classified material about sources and methods? There wasn't.
Well, let me say, I'm going to pull rank on everybody. I'm the lawyer in this group, and I'm going to simply tell you this: the FBI said don't release it, and they released it notwithstanding. Jason, you got to answer that.
But there was no classified material about sources and methods in the Nunes memo, correct?
It was classified. There was information about the procedure and the manner in which a warrant is obtained. That information should not have been released to the American public, but it was beneficial to Donald Trump, and he released it, notwithstanding a public statement from the FBI and Department of Justice not to release it.
Okay, John, let's go to this. There's also a word about a second dossier that is out there. Tell us what you know about that.
So in the summer of 2016, there was another pipeline of Clinton-related information coming into the State Department, and then to Christopher Steele, then to the FBI. It comes through two guys that we've heard of from the past. In the old Clinton years in the 90s, you might have been involved in some of those investigations. Cody Scherer, private eye, hung around the Clintons a lot. And Sidney Blumenthal, one of their closest friends, kind of their eye spy inside the Clinton campaign. And they put the information in, and it tracks very closely to what Steele had. So you have all this information coming in. I predict when we're done, all four sources of the information that the FBI used to launch the investigation against Donald Trump, every one of them is going to have a connection to the Clinton campaign.
Now, Dan, one of the concerns that's out there, Politico is reporting tonight that Steve Bannon may have actually been picked up on some of these surveillances. How does that strike you? I mean, it's right in the heart of the campaign. And they've also got now Steve Bannon, according to Politico, that they were spying on as well.
Well, Jason, we know two things right now, despite that interesting little opening by Leo there. We know that the Obama team spied on the Trump team. Okay, that's not in dispute. How it happened may be in dispute, but we know that happened. What we also know is we know because there are court transcripts, okay? There's an actual record of this that no Democrat's going to be able to run from and no Democrat's going to have plausible deniability on. We know that the bulk of the material that went in front of those FISA court judges was provided by, in fact, the dossier, a dossier that came from two sources. Russians who passed it through Christopher Steele and Clinton campaign associates. All the Democrat memos in the world aren't going to change those two simple facts. Full stop.
You know, that's simple. That's classic talking points, Dan. You know, FBI gets their information from all different sources. The bottom line is this. Let me take a page out of Jason. Let me get a page out of. No, wait. Oh, come on now. Let me get a page out of Jason's book. Trey Gowdy. You know him, Dan, don't you? Trey Gowdy said there is a need to proceed with the Russian probe. You don't disagree with Trey Gowdy, do you, Dan? Oh, okay.
Well, wait, hold on. Dan didn't say anything about that, but we're talking about the credibility of dossiers.
Leo, I don't know what you're talking about.
And then surveilling people that now has expanded to include potentially, at least we're looking at a report that's put out by Politico tonight that includes Steve Bannon. And that does beg the question of who else is used. Let me go to John for a second. John, where do you see this going in the next week or two?
I think the last piece of the evidence that came in that substantiated the FISA warrant at the beginning came from this ambassador, right? This Australian ambassador who hears Papadopoulos in the bar, drunk, having conversation with him. I think we're going to learn a lot more about that ambassador and where his loyalties might be. When that's all put together, I think you're going to find out four out of four things the FBI used to start listening in on the Trump campaign comes back to the Clinton family.
Now, Leo, does any of this concern you? And I got to ask you, give us look right in the camera and tell us, if Donald Trump had done this against a Democrat, you can't tell me that you'd just be sitting idly by saying, oh, the FBI has just acted perfectly in this instance.
Jason, I'm looking you and the American public straight in the eye right now. I'm leaning forward. Donald Trump is basically attacking every institution in the American government that he controls, the CIA, the FBI, Department of Justice. You want me to drink that Kool-Aid and believe that the FBI, the entire governmental security agencies are against Donald Trump? You want me to drink that Kool-Aid today on national TV? You believe that, Dan? You believe that the entire Secret Service,
okay, let's give Dan a chance to respond here, because
I'm just listening to you babble. Yeah. Leo, it's amazing. You do this, liberals do this all the time. They never actually address what you say. He goes on to something else. Here's what, notice, he never addressed at all the substance of what I said. We know for a fact the Obama team spied on the Trump team. We know the information was provided by Steele through the Russians, and we also know the information was provided through Clinton consiglieres. I know because one of them wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post today basically admitting to it, and another one went on a weekend news show, Victoria Nuland, and admitted to it too. Now Leo will go on about the Russians again, because that's what they do.
No, I'll play your game. And therefore, what? What are you making a conclusion? Tell us your conclusion. And therefore, what? What? Who committed the crime?
The Obama
Tell me the
team,
conclusion.
I mean, you may be hard of hearing, but I already said it. The Obama team spied on the Trump team. There's still no probable cause that anyone on the Trump team was a foreign agent in violation of U.S. law. No one's produced a scintilla of evidence of Russian collusion, and you're still sticking by that this was all done great because you're a police state supporter. End of story.
Let me go to John.
I see.
Hold on. Let me go to John here. There are still a mountain of text messages that we have not seen.
It's true.
And is there any fallout that you're seeing? I mean, the FBI put out there that they couldn't find these missing text messages.
And they showed up.
Only to have the Inspector General, I think it was less than 48 hours, go and find them.
That's right. Yeah, I think the Inspector General's report in March will be one of the most seminal moments in this whole thing. It'll help to resolve how much politics was involved and how much legitimate law enforcement. When we see the full breadth of what the independent IG does, I think we're going to have a more complete picture, and this debate may take an entirely different tack. It will.
Leo, are you willing to accept what the Inspector General comes up with?
He's making this prediction about the Inspector General report. Can you please have me on when this report comes out? Because I hope, according to Dan, there's going to be all these indictments against the Obama administration. It's doomed. It's a great way to deflect from Donald Trump and the Russian probe. Great move, Dan. It's very smart.
No,
but I'm not going to.
You have no evidence of that.
Leo,
you're just making it up.
15 seconds. 15 seconds, Leo. What's your single best piece of evidence that Donald Trump colluded with Russians? The single best one. What is it?
Nothing.
Best piece of evidence, I'll use the Trey Gowdy approach. A couple of Russians were meeting with Donald Trump.
Trey Gowdy?
Trump Tower.
He's got nothing.
I know. I'll use the same one that he used.
This is funny.
The Trumps meeting with the Russians at Trump Tower. Pretty solid evidence there.
Dan, you get the last word. Where do you see this going?
Genius case there. Yeah, maybe Mark Warner should be under arrest too then for trying to set up a meeting with the Russians, the Democrat senator from Virginia. I mean, unbelievable. He had nothing. He had no answer for you.
The one thing I think we can all agree about, we'll be talking about this next week. We've got to move on.
True.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful weekend. I appreciate you being here with us. While all of this is going on, key players at the White House are suddenly accused of a cover-up. Up next, how the resignation of Rob Porter amid domestic violence allegations is being used to attack the entire administration.